Eastern Cape are currently battling dozens of active blazes that have already scorched more than 100,000 hectares of land. The Weather Service has maintained extremely high fire danger warnings for both provinces as a perfect storm of high temperatures, low humidity, and gale-force winds continues to fan the flames. Let's chat now with fire ecologist Matthew Danckwerts. Matthew, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on this afternoon. The elements, it seems, are natural elements that we're dealing with: dry weather conditions, wind, excessive heat. I mean, is there something that these provinces can really do to mitigate?
I think it's important to start with just stating that this is the fire season in the Western Cape and western parts of the Eastern Cape. And this is a natural phenomenon. And we expect dry, hot weather with strong winds this time of year. And when we have extended periods of dry weather, as we've had this season, a dry spring and a dry summer, then we can expect more intense or more frequent fires, more widespread fires in the late summer of the season in these provinces. This has been exacerbated by a few years, or preceded by a few years of really good rainfall seasons, which has encouraged vegetation growth, or there's been a lot of vegetation growth and increased the fuel load, the amount of vegetation there is, which has then been dried out this early summer.
Are things like fire breaks, I mean, cleared strips of land that naturally man-made acts of barriers, do they help? I mean, is this something that maybe these particular provinces that are prone to this type of occurrence should be investing more in?
Look, it's important to have fire breaks, especially around areas where you expect ignitions to occur. But once fires start raging and are burning out of control, there's very little fire breaks can do to prevent the forward spread of these fires. So they're very important to prevent the spread of fires in their early development. But once the fires are burning out of control, there's not much that they can do.
Yeah, and so what's the best response? I mean, in an instance like this, where we are seeing, I mean, 1 minute the fire would be on one side of the road, and the next minute, with the wind and everything that goes on, you'll see the other part of a farm that is on fire. I mean, what is the best response? I mean, there have been requests for all hands on deck, but I don't know if we've got enough to be able to respond.
Look, the brave men and women who are fighting these fires are doing the best they can, but the best response is prevention, and that happens months and years before. We obviously knew about the good rainfall years, and we've got to identify areas where there's a lot of vegetation, old vegetation, which hasn't burnt in a while. And you've really got to get in and implement prescribed burns to reduce those fuel loads. Those are your high-risk areas you've got to identify. Once a fire starts raging, there's very little you can do when it's burning out of control and hot, dry, and gusting storm winds.
So if I hear you correctly, you're saying that the observation should have been in the years where we were seeing good rain. You're saying good rain, yes, it's good for water supply, maybe it's good for farmers as well, in terms of crops and so forth. But there's also a risk that there is more vegetation that grows, and some of it then would dry up in the drier seasons. If that is not taken care of, it would result, I suppose, in an uncontrollable situation when these fires break out.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of things you've got to take into consideration. There's the ecology of it and, what's best for the environment. But from a safety perspective, more frequent fires reduce the fuel load. So this is an ongoing thing. It's not just in the wet seasons. You've got to do this every year. You've got to identify your high-risk areas, your areas with a lot of fuel load, and implement prescribed burns there. Landowners are stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's the general public are generally not favorable towards prescribed burns. and it makes landowners' lives difficult to implement these burns. They also got to apply for various permits, and they can be told on the day that they plan to burn a fire that they're not allowed to put it in because of various factors. So it's a challenging task, but yeah, this is what needs to be done.
Right. Also, you're saying prescribed burns are quite a task to undertake. I mean, do landowners get a lot of pushback, legal pushback from residents when they do these prescribed burns? And on what grounds are people pushing back?
There's two sides to this. There's there's just the general public's perception. They don't want their curtains to smell like smoke, to use a metaphor. But there's also the legal risk, and they face. There's always the risk that a controlled fire might get out of control, and there might be a loss of property, and they could face litigation.
And the steps that you're mentioning, I mean, for one to do this and the approval, what does it really entail? Is it also an economic issue? Is it a cost factor? Look,
implementing prescribed burns is a relatively low-cost strategy when you compare it to firefighting. So, yes, it takes a bit of resources and generally a lot of experience, but it's relatively a low-cost strategy.
All right, that's Matthew there, Danckwerts. Much appreciated. Thank you so much for coming on. He's a fire ecologist there on the current fire fighting initiatives, I suppose, and endeavors by the Western as well as the Eastern Cape firefighters and some of the municipalities there. Let's take